of all, okay. First of all, I want to thank you very much, and I appreciate very much that you are taking time. Also, for me, it's an honor for me to talk to you. Also, for getting narcissistic supply, I have to say. And well, some short sentences to me. I'm German journalist working for German National Radio and Television, high-class radio and television, no commercial. So very serious subjects, and I try to make your work and your research more public, because I think it's very important that more people are aware about narcissistic personal disorder. And I was myself victimized. I don't say victim. I learned not to say victim, but victimized. And I learned a lot about myself. I was diagnosed with HDD, not with ADHD, and I have to face, after this abuse of that guy, that my two parents were narcissist. The one was an overt narcissist, and I always thought about myself, what's wrong with my parents? Well, I moved out very early because I couldn't stand it anymore. So I had prepared some questions, and I invite you to talk very much, because I can use it for many publications. Okay.
Thank you.
I will put on my yes. I will put on my glasses.
Thank you for having me and for your kind words.
Yeah, sure. Yes. I want to first make a difference between narcissistic style, narcissistic traits, and narcissistic personal disorder. I think that's very important, because there are many so-called self-styled experts in the internet who are mixing all the stuff together. Why is it so important to make this difference?
They're mixing not only this, but they're mixing narcissists and psychopaths. They're mixing narcissists and bipolars. I mean, borderlines and bipolars. I mean, I would not rely on the internet or on YouTube as a source of information. If I were in trouble, if I needed, I would really try to minimize the input from YouTube. There's a lot of very good information available via scholar.google.com, online in terms of open access journals and so on. The difference between narcissistic style, narcissistic traits, and narcissistic personality disorder is the differences are pretty big. It's like the difference between common cold and pneumonia. Both of them are respiratory illnesses. Both of them, you're coughing and you're sneezing and your nose is stuffy and everything. We have difficulty breathing, but they're not the same, of course. Narcissistic traits are pretty common. Actually, some of them are beneficial. They are part of healthy narcissism, which is the foundation for self-esteem and self-confidence. We have narcissistic defenses, for example. We have a way of using defense mechanisms in order to reframe reality. One could even say falsify reality, so that we don't find reality unbearable and intolerable and fall apart. These are all narcissistic defenses. And so narcissism is not necessarily a bad thing on the level of traits. Narcissistic style, first proposed by Len Sperry. Narcissistic style is simply someone who is exploitative, disempathic, self-centered, selfish, goal-oriented, and in this sense is reminiscent a bit of a psychopath, but doesn't have the major features of narcissistic personality disorder. For example, is able to tell the difference between fantasy and reality, which the narcissist, person with narcissistic personality disorder, is incapable of doing. Is able to tell the difference between external objects and internal objects, which the narcissist is not capable of doing. And in this sense, the narcissist resembles a psychotic person. Has a self. Someone with narcissistic style has a fully functioning self, while the narcissist self has been disrupted in early childhood and is therefore fragmented, dysfunctional, diffuse, and disturbed. It's called identity disturbance or identity diffusion. The narcissist, when I say narcissist, I mean person diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder,
Yes.
not by his wife and not by his colleague, but by a qualified mental health diagnostician with a lot of experience and exposure to the disorder. So a narcissist lives in fantasy, is able to relate to other people only via fantasy, is invested in cognitive distortions, his reality testing is impaired, is unable to gauge reality appropriately, especially when it comes to himself. His self-concept is grandiose, fantastic, and inflated. And so there are massive differences between the style and the disorder. There are many people who are obnoxious, they're a-holes, excuse me for the expression, they're unpleasant people, and yes, they're narcissistic, but they're not narcissists.
Okay. You are diagnosed with narcissistic disorder.
Let's keep my private life out of this.
Yes, okay.
Let's discuss
okay. But when I see you and you are so aware, like me, about my HDD and about some narcissistic traits and some psychopathic traits, I know that and I can reflect it. When I see you and I see your work and I see your research, and you said it brings me much more success or pleasure to inform the people. So you can reflect, why are people with narcissistic personal disorders are incapable of reflecting themselves because they lack specific human behaviors? Is that really the cause, that it doesn't resonate in the inside what they can receive cognitively? Is it
First of all, there is a gap between cognitive awareness and what we call insight. Insight is a transformational process that involves emotional resonance with new information. So when you see yourself differently, for example, in therapy, and then you react to this new view of yourself emotionally, you would have insight which will transform you. What is missing with the narcissist is not self-awareness. Actually, all narcissists are fully aware of their actions. And some narcissists are fully aware of their own psychology and motivations. So that is not what is missing. What is missing is the emotional component, the affective correlate, the emotional reaction to this information. The narcissists possess a type of empathy, which I describe as cold empathy. Cold empathy is a combination of reflexive empathy and cognitive empathy. They're able to understand other people, even very deeply. They're very incisive. They are able to spot your vulnerabilities, your weak points, your fears, but they don't respond emotionally to this new information. Similarly, they are able to self-diagnose, if you wish, but they don't react emotionally to this because the narcissist has no access to positive emotions, only to negative emotions. The narcissist is unable to form insight. And because the narcissist is unable to form insight, there's no transformational process or even learning. Narcissists cannot learn efficaciously because all learning, all memories, all transformation, all cognitive processes that are not coupled with emotions die, they vanish. That's another reason the narcissist is highly dissociative. He doesn't have the glue that holds memories together, which is emotions. Emotions are the glue that hold memories together. And narcissists don't have access to emotions, so they cannot remember well. They're highly dissociative, they have memory gaps. And they compensate for these memory gaps by confabulating, by inventing plausible, possible scenarios as to what might have happened. And then they believe these stories and they become emotionally invested in them and they identify them or misidentify them as memories. I'm describing a variety of processes in narcissism, dysfunctional pathological processes. And the root of all these processes is the lack of access to positive emotions.
But when you say no access to emotions,
positive emotions,
in your positive emotions, does that mean they have no positive emotions at all, or they don't have only access to them? They are there, but they don't have. It's fossilized, maybe like the true self.
Nothing. It doesn't matter. If you don't have access to your positive emotions, you don't have positive emotions. You don't experience them. They don't motivate you. They don't team up with other processes, for example, memories or cognitions. They don't have any effect on your internal world or your external behavior. So you might as well say that narcissists do not have positive emotions. If you insist on the archaeology of narcissism, yes, the narcissists possess positive emotions. These positive emotions in early childhood were coupled, got associated with negative outcomes. So the narcissist, for example, as a child, loved, for example, his mother, and the outcome was pain because the mother was rejecting or neglectful or ignored him or instrumentalized the child or parentified the child or abused the child or traumatized the child. So the child's first experience of love got associated with pain and negative outcomes. So the child is terrified after that to experience love, represses it, and has no access to it for the rest of the child's life as an adult. Narcissists are able to experience all negative emotions. This is known as negative affectivity. They're able to experience envy, anger, hatred, no problem. All negative emotions are actually overemphasized in narcissism and psychopathy. And in many cases, these emotions are coupled with aggression and they're externalized. This is known as externalization. So narcissists are perfectly okay with these emotions because they believe that these emotions render them superior and more self-efficacious. The narcissist believes that if he hates someone, if he's envious, definitely if he's angry, he would be able to control the other person and to modify the other person's behaviors in a way which would be beneficial to the narcissist. So narcissists are positively invested, cathected. The clinical term is cathexis. Narcissists are positively cathected in negative emotions, which means that they can't experience anything positive, and therefore they have no joy, no cheer, no love, none of these things. And it's very difficult to maintain the internal economy of the mind without these signposts, road marks, because emotions are like signposts. They're like reminders. Emotions are like reminders, like the alarm in your smartphone. Emotions alarm you to a variety of internal processes. It's a massive deficiency, massive deficit.
That means narcissists stumble through the world without understanding the skills and social interactions based on empathy. When I say to a narcissist, good morning, he interprets it like, what the fuck does he want from me? So how manages a narcissist his daily life? Is it so rigid, so predictable, and he's playing an act, he's playing a movie? We know that by your lectures, but what does that mean for the narcissist? He has to feel much more anger, not anger, but anxiety to make something wrong, or so narcissism is not happy-go-lucky, as you said in your lectures.
Well, you raise quite a few issues. First of all, anxiety is closely correlated with narcissism and with psychopathy. And narcissist defends against the anxiety by becoming compulsively rigid and by obsessing. So we know from the ICD, from the International Classification of Diseases, we know that one of the main trait domains of narcissism is anankastia. Anankastia is a fancy word for obsession compulsion. So these are rituals. The narcissist develops rigid rituals to fend off this uncertainty, this indeterminacy, to render the world more predictable and more manageable. That's one type of defense. The other type of defense is, of course, fantasy. When reality is unbearable, intolerable, incomprehensible, surrealistic, nightmarish, fantasy is a refuge. The paracosm, the virtual reality, the alternative reality of the narcissist is a refuge, a sanctuary, and he runs there away from reality. It's escapism in a way. The thing with the narcissist, he tries to impose these solutions on other people. It's not like the narcissist says, okay, I cannot stand reality. I don't understand reality. I don't understand people. I cannot decipher or decode people because I miss crucial parts of the equipment. I don't have empathy. I don't have positive emotions. And what motivates people mostly is empathy and positive emotions. So I cannot understand people. Okay, I'm going to withdraw to my fantasy. Leave me alone. That is the solution of the schizoid. Schizoid withdraws into a guarded space which has fantastic elements, and says, leave me alone. The narcissist says, you're wrong. Reality is wrong. I'm going to impose on you my fantasy and my defenses and my rituals and my rigidity. And I'm going to force you to confirm to me, to tell me that this is reality. My fantasy is reality. My false self is not false. My rituals are rational. My solutions and decisions are superior to yours because I'm a superior being, of course. My grandiosity is justified. I am a genius, or I am drop-dead gorgeous, or I am whatever. So it is the compulsive nature of the narcissist on the one hand, and his coercive nature. He coerces people. He externalizes aggression in the service of maintaining his internal regulation. He uses people to regulate his internal space, regulate his emotions, his moods, his cognitions. He instrumentalizes people just in order to maintain an equilibrium, some form of homeostasis or stability internally. This is something that no one else does. There is no other mental health disorder where people are used to self-medicate. Narcissist uses people as the same way other people use anxiolytics or some other types of medication. And so he has to objectify people. And it's terrifying because his dependency on people is total. Narcissistic supply that emanates from people is used to regulate the narcissist's sense of self-worth, but also emotions and moods. So his dependency is absolute. And if people were to betray him or abandon him, or simply decline to participate in the shared fantasy, or expose him, or challenge him, or confront him, or disagree with him, or criticize him, any of these things is very threatening. So what the narcissist does, he converts people into internal objects. The narcissist can control internal objects. It's safe. It's a safe environment because he's in charge. He's a puppet master. Everyone becomes an internalized puppet. And then there's no risk because they are going to do what he says. They're going to tell him what he wants to hear. They're going to support the fantasy and become part of it, and so on and so forth. The problem starts when you, as an external object, display independence, personal autonomy, self-efficacy, agency. That is very threatening to the narcissist because your external existence confronts or contradicts the internal object that he has created based on you, your representation.
You said in your lectures, the moment he makes a snapshot of you, he starts to devalue you because he knows that he will fail again, because failure is a common modality in his life. So failure and devaluation and discard is baked into that process already.
Yes. Devaluation has two psychodynamic sources, two psychological motivations. That's why it's absolutely inevitable and has nothing to do with you. You could be the perfect partner, the most loving and caring and compassionate and helpful. You could support the narcissist's fantasy. You can lie to him. You can tell him, yes, your false self is not self. You can even become brainwashed and join his cult. You can never mind what you do and never mind who you are. That's a common mistake of victims. They aggrandize. They say, I was chosen because I'm empathic, because I'm kind, because I'm nice. That's nonsense. Never mind who you are and never mind what you do, you're going to be devalued because there are two compelling psychological processes at work. Number one, the narcissist anticipates failure. As you said, ultimately, you're going to diverge, you're going to deviate from the internal object. You're going to begin to contradict the internal object, undermine the internal object, and threaten the inner, precarious inner balance of the narcissist. So he anticipates this, and he needs to get rid of you before this happens. The second reason is what I call dual mothership. The narcissist shared fantasy is constructed on a reenactment of his early childhood conflicts with his mother or a maternal figure. Maternal figure doesn't have to be the mother. Anyone who fulfilled the mother functions. So could even be a man, a father. Yeah, but anyone who fulfilled the maternal functions is what I call the mother. So the narcissist reenacts his early dynamic and conflicts and failure with the original mother. In this reenactment, the narcissist needs to convert you into a maternal figure. Doesn't matter if you're man or woman. Doesn't matter if you're intimate partner or colleague. Doesn't matter if you're friend or acquaintance. Everyone is converted instantly into a maternal figure. And then the narcissist plays out the dynamic of the maternal figure, which leads to what is known as separation individuation. Narcissist needs to separate from you in order to become an individual. And so he needs to get rid of you. Again, there's no way out of this, and there's no way to change these dynamics. They are unconscious, they are baked in, they're integral, they're part of the user's manual. Nothing
and
to
the
be done.
The dual mothership means that my narcissist acted as a mother also for me.
Yes.
I fell in love with myself. Not with the narcissist at first, but in love with myself. That means the dual mothership.
Yes, when the narcissist comes across another person, and again, it's very crucial to emphasize, the only way the narcissist interacts with other people, the only way the narcissist has interpersonal relationships is via the shared fantasy framework. It does not matter if you're intimate partner, colleague, friend, whatever. So he comes across you and he says to himself, oh, this guy can play a significant role. This guy can participate, can become meaningful in a shared fantasy. So you need to pass a few tests. He tests you at first. And then you pass these tests, and he says, okay, he passed the test, he can be an actor. It's exactly like auditioning. You're auditioning, or he auditions you. And then you pass the audition, and now you can be an actor. At that point, the narcissist converts you in his mind into an internal object. That internal object initially is a maternal figure. The narcissist becomes your mother. You're a child. The narcissist regresses you, infantilizes you, coerces you actually to regress if you refuse, makes you more helpless, more dependent, less opinionated, exposes your ignorance, plays on your vulnerabilities, reduces you, demeans you, degrades you, until you become really an infant, totally dependent on the narcissist for regulation, for happiness, for love, and so the narcissist makes you a baby, an infant, and becomes your mother. At the same time, the narcissist expects you to be a maternal figure. You are supposed to be the narcissist's mother. So when the narcissist is with you, he regresses and infantilizes himself. You experience this process as self-love. Because the narcissist idealizes you as a maternal figure. In order to be a maternal figure, you need to be ideal mother. So narcissist idealizes you. And then the narcissist gives you access to two things. To your idealized image in his mind. In other words, you see yourself as an ideal, perfect entity through the narcissist's gaze. It's very intoxicating. It's very addictive.
Absolutely.
For the first time, you see yourself as a perfect being. That's exactly what a mother does with her newborn baby. Narcissist idealizes you as a mother would idealize her child. That's one thing. The second thing, the narcissist gives you access to his inner child, to his, what remains of his true self, and triggers in you the maternal instinct. So simultaneously, you become a beloved child, idealized, perfect, amazing, hyper-intelligent, drop-dead gorgeous, flawless. It's irresistible. You want more. You want more of this. You want this laser focus of attention. You want this addiction. You want the, it's a drug. It's a drug. And you become a junkie. And this is what I call the hole of mirror, because you see yourself multiplied in a million mirrors inside the narcissist's mind. You don't fall in love with the narcissist. You fall in love with the way the narcissist sees you. You fall in love with your idealized image, idealized version via the narcissist's gaze. At the same time, you love the narcissist's inner child the way a mother would. So it's a bond that is impossible to break, because simultaneously you're a baby who is loved unconditionally, and at the same time you're a mother who loves unconditionally another baby, the narcissist. This is the dual.
But when you said, I see in the narcissist the inner child, in one of your lectures you said, even being a child is an act by the narcissist to manipulate the people. Yes. It's not the real child I see, it's a movie I see. And that makes it also so addictive, because that was what happened really to me. He was changing from an adult, mature man to a child, and that touched my heart, that touched my feelings very, very deeply. And sometimes I thought I have to deal with a 3, 4, 5-year-old child. I wanted to hug, I wanted to care of. And in one of your lectures, you said it's also a movie, a play to manipulate, to exploit people.
The narcissist self has never formed, never integrated, never constellated. It's a disrupted process. And so the narcissist has to simulate everything. Everything is mimicry. The adult also. The adult is a simulation. The child is a simulation. The grandiosity is simulated. The fantasy is, it's all simulation.
You said the narcissists are the best actors ever.
It's not even acting, because acting the actor knows the difference between the role and himself. The actor is able to tell the difference between fantasy and reality, the movie and life. Narcissist is incapable of this, for the very simple reason the narcissist doesn't exist. The actor exists to some extent. A very good actor minimizes his existence. It's true, but it's never zero. The narcissist is zero. There's nobody there. There was a psychologist, Thurston, and she said that it's a black hole. So there's nobody there. And instead what you have is a set, a repertory of super sophisticated simulations that are very misleading and resemble reality to a huge extent. That's why artificial intelligence is very worrying. And so these simulations draw you in, and where there are discrepancies, you fill in the blanks. All people react to narcissists and to some extent psychopaths. All people react with what is known as the uncanny valley reaction. Yeah. All people from the first second react with some type of doubt, discomfort. There's something off. Something doesn't fit. It's like this human being has not been put together appropriately, or the manufacturing process was disrupted in the middle. It's not full-fledged, it's half-baked. We react with uncanny valley, but we deceive ourselves because we are lonely, because we give the benefit of the doubt, because we assume that all people are essentially good, or maybe had a bad day, or whatever. We invent all kinds of excuses. And so we suppress this uncanny valley reaction, this gut feeling, this intuition. And it's very wrong to do, very wrong to suppress it, because it's a good guide, good counselor, good friend. And we fall for it. And we fall for these simulations because they're highly detailed. What the narcissist does from a very early age he creates what I call emotional resonance tables. These are huge tables correlating explicit observable behavior with alleged internal mental states as reported by participants. So he would talk to people and people would say, I'm crying, I'm sad. And then he would write it down in the database. He would say, when people cry, their internal mental state is sadness. And this is how to do it. You must crunch your face, you must have, and he will do it. He will imitate. So it's mimicry. It's not actually acting. It's like mimicry in nature when an insect pretends to be a leaf. You know, it's much closer to mimicry in nature.
And that means I can deal with another person every second because there is nobody.
It's a predator which shapeshifts and uses mimicry, and it's not a person. It's a simulation. There's no person there. There's no self, no personhood, not even ego. That's the irony. Everyone says the narcissist is an egotist. There's no ego there. Ego is has many functions. One of them, perhaps the major one, is reality testing. Ego tells you what is real, what is not. And narcissist doesn't have this. Narcissist cannot tell the difference between fantasy and reality. So clearly, there's no functioning ego there.
You call them even aliens, automata, programmed robots.
I'm looking for metaphors. You know, these are metaphors. Of course, they are not alien, but these are metaphors. Yeah, I think to presume or to assume that aliens will possess the same emotional equipment and the same capacity to empathize as we do is a long shot. And if aliens do possess empathy, they would find it very difficult to empathize with us. They would empathize with other aliens, but not with us. So it's a metaphor. And aliens probably, like everyone else, would use a persona, would use a mask initially when they interact with us. Everyone on the first encounter uses a mask. This was described by Jung, by Goffman, by many others. We all the time, when we, on our first meetings, first date, first job interview, we use a mask. It's not us, it's a mask. The difference with the narcissist, there's only the mask. There's no one behind the mask, and the mask is forever.
So how does narcissist perceive love? Is it when he's under control of another person and that for him is love because he feels comfortable, has no anxiety, because he cannot feel love, he cannot give love? What is love for the narcissist then?
Everything in the narcissist is self-referential. And because narcissists have a strong component of dissociality or antisociality, everything is a bit psychopathic. So what the narcissist will perceive as being loved is catering to his needs. That is love, being loved. What the narcissist perceive as loving another person is she is giving me the things that I need. So I have emotional investment in her. I'm saying she, he, half of all narcissists are women. Yeah. So it's about give and take. It's an interpretation of the interpersonal interactions in terms of benefits or outcomes, which is the psychopathic side of narcissism. But the psychopath knows the difference between fantasy and reality. So the psychopath will focus on the goals. He would take what you have to give and he would walk away. And he would have no emotional reaction to the fact that you gave him anything. While the narcissist would take what you have to give and then he would create a narrative that is magical and enchanted and Disney-like as to why you gave him and how he felt when you gave him and all kinds of nonsense that have no bearing on reality. So he would force you into the fantasy. This is the difference. And so narcissists would tell you that they're capable of loving, even intensely. And they would tell you that they identify love in other people or when they're being loved or so on. But this is total mislabeling. This is about self-gratification, catering to very primitive needs, infantile needs, and so on. I would say this is how narcissists experience the way I think a baby experiences the mother's love. A baby experiences the mother's love because she breastfeeds him, or because he has skin-to-skin contact, the gratification. Similarly, sex, for example. The narcissist sex is autoerotic. For the narcissist, sex is with himself. It could be mediated via another person's body. And then when that other person gratifies the narcissist, allows the narcissist to masturbate with her body, the narcissist would say that he has had great sex. But it's all about the narcissist. The narcissist sees himself reflected in the lover's eyes, in her gaze, and it turns him on. When the partner, when the lover finds the narcissist irresistible or attractive, the narcissist then has confirmation that he is sexy. And then he is aroused, not with the partner, with himself. It's like the narcissist says, my lover finds me attractive. That means I'm attractive. And that means I can be safely attracted to myself. I'm not deluding myself. I'm not lying to myself. I am attractive. So now I can have sex with myself. Now I can be attracted to myself.
Also to mitigate, to ameliorate the bad voice, the bad inner voice, because you said that the narcissist, you never experience such a pernicious and insidious self-hate like in the narcissist. So narcissist uses the sex for feeling better and silent the bad voices, the bad object inside him.
Not only the sex, narcissists use everything, literally everything. Narcissistic supply, the fantasy, the sex, the illusion of love, everything. In order to somehow survive the internal onslaught, the internal attack, the internal October 7, by this group or coalition of voices. Now, there's a big debate in psychology to this very day. Some psychologists say that the narcissist does not have an internalized bad object. On the very contrary, it has an idealized, grandiose, fantastic internal object, and therefore that the narcissist is egosyntonic. The narcissist feels comfortable with himself, is a happy-go-lucky, he experiences pleasure with his own being, and so is his best friend, so to speak. And he sees nothing wrong with himself, and so on. So this is one school. And the other school, which is now becoming definitely the dominant school, and to which I have belonged from the very beginning, is that narcissism, pathological narcissism, is compensatory. It compensates for something. And what it compensates for is the absence of a self. So there is the false self. It's a compensation for the absence of a self. And the characteristics of the false self are everything the child is not. The false self knows everything and can predict behavior of people. The child cannot. The false self is omnipotent, all-powerful. The child is helpless. So clearly the false self is compensatory because it is created in early childhood. We all agree, all psychologists agree on this. It's created in early childhood, but it has dominant compensatory elements, clearly, because it's everything the child is not. It's godlike. So, and then we ask the question, what is the child compensating for? Well, maybe lack of love, or neglect, or being instrumentalized, or parentified, or being abused, or traumatized. Yeah, child is compensating for this. The false self is an imaginary friend, which is very protective of the child. Enters the false self. When we study the compensatory typology, the attributes and characteristics of the false self, we understand what's happening inside the child. The child is compensating for something that is happening internally. Clearly, the child regards itself as unlovable, unworthy, helpless, unwise, or even stupid, and so on. And this is what the false self is compensating for. Gradually, the child creates a divinity, a deity, a godlike entity, and the rudiments of a primitive religion. The relationship with the false self is like the relationship between ancient primitive peoples and their divinities and deities, like the Moloch. The child relies on the false self for protection from abuse, from pain, from trauma. And so the child strikes a Faustian deal with the false self. Child says, I will give you my soul. I'll sacrifice myself, human sacrifice to you. And in return, you, the false self, will make me godlike, protected, impregnable, invincible, untouchable, incapable of being hurt, invulnerable. And this is the deal that extends to the last days of the narcissist throughout the lifespan. And this is the core of the relationship between the narcissist and his grandiosity, his need for supply, and the false self.
An adult, but they are dealing.
Yeah, sorry.
And that what makes therapists do wrong. They think they are dealing with an adult, but they actually dealing with a 2-year-old child who has an, you say, arrested development, stuck in the development of emotional habits, of separation, everything that makes us grow. So how must therapists deal with narcissists if they ever come to a therapy? They have to work with the child. They cannot make any contracts or any promises. They have to be aware that the narcissist is lying to them. They have to be aware that the narcissist is comparing with them. They get in a discussion with them. The narcissist is better. So it's very difficult to work with a narcissist because they are stuck in childhood, in early childhood.
Yes. So we have to accept that this is a traumatized child, a child who is in a post-traumatic condition. And we have to work with the tools that we have. We have quite a few tools with child therapy, and we definitely have very powerful tools when it comes to trauma therapy. The only problem is we never use these tools when we deal with narcissists, because we regard narcissists as well or relatively well-adjusted adults. They hold jobs, they make a lot of money, some of them are famous and accomplished, and we say, well, you know, they know their way around life and around society, and they're adults. So we deal with them therapists deal with narcissists as they would deal with any other adult, with temporary difficulties in relationships, or that's not true. That's a child, and it's not only a child, but a child in a post-traumatic condition, emotionally speaking. Cognitively, the narcissist is able to become a pillar of the community, to be very accomplished, and so on. Similarly, the narcissist has only one type of working memory. He has some semantic memory. The narcissist is able to learn skills and memorize these skills and use the memory later. So professionally, the narcissist can become very accomplished using semantic memory. But the narcissist doesn't have episodic memory, doesn't have autobiographical memory. Narcissist has huge memory gaps when it comes to his or her own personal biography. We need to take all these things into account, and we don't, not even remotely. So therapists try to question the narcissist about events in his or her life. Therapists make therapeutic alliances and agreements with the narcissist. They reason with the narcissist. This is ridiculous. Of course, it doesn't get anywhere. Of course, there's constant failure when we deal with narcissists. The psychopath is a different story. Psychopath is an adult. It's a goal-oriented adult. And the psychopath disagrees with you about the role of society. That's why I do not think that psychopathy is a mental illness. Psychopathy is a social aberration, social problem. It's not mental at all. There's nothing wrong with a psychopath mentally. Nothing. He was born with a different brain. There's a brain abnormality, definitely. There's a genetic, hereditary component. But what this brain, and I'm not quite sure that the brain is not the outcome of the psychopathy. We don't quite know if the brain is abnormal and then there is psychopathy, or vice versa. At any rate, there's nothing wrong with the psychopath. Not emotionally, his reality testing is intact, everything. The psychopath just thinks that if there is a goal, you know, the means justify the end, and he can do anything he wants to accomplish the goal. Can and
And
should.
he lives in reality, the psychopath.
Yes, he's embedded in reality, he's goal-oriented, he's capable of emotions. There's nothing wrong with the psychopath. Nothing.
Let's talk about splitting. It's very interesting. The narcissist world is divided in two spaces, the good and the bad. And between there is nothing, and he never develops a different view on people, on the world. So that's why it comes to devaluation and to discard concerning people and concerning the world in general, which is for him is a hostile place.
The narcissist inhabits a perpetual morality play. So in this morality play, there's a devil, and there are angels. People are all good or all bad. And there are many people who are not narcissists and not even mentally ill, who regard reality this way. For example, religious people. They regard reality the same way. It's a morality play. There's God and the devil, and they're fighting for the souls of people and so on. The problem with the narcissist is the inconstancy. Whereas religious people would agree that the devil is a devil and God is God. In the narcissist world, God can become the devil and the devil can become God on Monday, and the next day it will be reversed, and the fourth day it will be again reversed. There's no constancy of objects, and there's no constancy of the attributes of objects. So when he splits, when he says all good, all bad, the same person can be all good at the beginning of the week and all bad at the end of the week. So, and that's the problem with narcissism.
That means the narcissist has introject constancy. And does he keep all his introjects all his life, like
Yes.
a big library of people, and he never will lose them? And when he needs them, he takes it out of his shelf and plays with it or
Yes.
interacts with it.
He would then re-idealize someone, for example. So he discarded someone, he devalued someone. The introject remains. The introject now is a persecutory object. The introject is all bad, evil, threatening, menacing, and so on. So it's deactivated. In order not to create internal dissonance, the introject is deactivated because it has negative vibes or negative energy. Yeah. But then at some point, the narcissist can take this very introject and re-idealize it. The clinical term is recathexis. Recathect it, re-idealize it. And then this is at the basis of hoovering. The narcissist re-idealizes someone he has discarded and then wants to restart the shared fantasy from the point that it ended, like nothing happened in between. So the narcissists don't have a time perception as well. There's no time perception. All people in the narcissist world are frozen, absolutely frozen in a macabre theater. And they're frozen on stage. And then he animates them by touching them, like magic touch, you know. He animates them, some of them. He animates you, and then he freezes you. He animates another person. He may come back to you and reanimate you with his touch. This is how narcissists perceive people.
But you said the second time, when he hoovers, the second time gets even more tragic, because in the first time he has a goal, in the first making contact, first snapshot, but the second thing, he doesn't have a goal, and that makes him very confused. Why is that so?
A narcissist would hoover you or re-idealize you or reactivate the introject because he has no choice. It's usually he would try to avoid this. And so he had no choice. He tried with others, he failed, or some other, he tried to re-idealize other introjects and he failed. It's a failure. It's a consequence of failure. So the second idealization is associated with what we call narcissistic collapse. There's been a failure at the foundation of this. And this constant reminder of failure dooms the second relationship, and also disrupts massively the ability to for example, idealize the partner fully as a maternal figure. So the second round is more difficult, more fraught, requires a lot more self-deception and self-denial, a lot more imagination, if you wish, a lot more fantasy, is much more removed from reality, much more cult-like. And the outcomes are egregious and much more pronounced, much more intense and eruptive and dynamic and so on. Because
even more
it starts
aggressive.
with a failure.
And even more aggressive most of the time.
Yes,
the
because it
second
starts
time.
with a failure. The narcissist needs to deny the failure somehow. But he cannot, because you're there. You're a reminder that he failed. Otherwise, why is he back with you? He's back with you because he failed.
Okay, let's come to the haunting places of narcissists.
I'm sorry, I have a client.
Okay, so, okay. We can.
I suggest the following. Yes. I'm available to continue this conversation if you wish.
Yes. Yes. Sure.
Today, either today, if you're free.
Okay.
Around 4:15.
Okay. Okay.
And
okay,
if you're not free, we can continue some other time. But
no,
I must run. I have a client.
No, we can continue at 4:15. When you're available, we make it like that. You drop me an email when you are ready. I'm waiting for you. So if it's later, it's okay.
No, it will not be later. Okay? It will be 4:15.
No, okay. I'm waiting for you. Thank you very much.
I have to run. I apologize.
Bye. Sure. Bye. I just want to remind on the work of Melanie Klein. Her work was very, very famous, and she was really very good in her subject. And she, talking about dichotomy thinking, splitting, she said there is a good breast, there is a bad breast, and the bad breast, the child attacks the bad breast with his urine or with his shit. And that I find in sexuality of somatic narcissists, that they are addicted to see shit on vagina or on an ass. For me, it sounds like the narcissist again reminds himself on his early childhood what he experienced and he's stuck in it. Is that right, my interpretation?
Well, Melanie Klein used the terms bad breast and good breast to describe the various aspects of the mother. When the child cannot reconcile the fact that the mother is sometimes good and sometimes bad, sometimes gives him food and sometimes doesn't give it food, sometimes is in the room, sometimes leaves the room, sometimes is accommodating and sometimes is frustrating. So the child creates two images of mother, the bad mother and the good mother. And Melanie Klein called it bad breast and good breast. Initially, the child is unable to integrate the two pictures, unable to create an image of mother that is nuanced, with nuance, that has gray zones, and so on. So Melanie Klein said that the child splits. The child says, for example, mother is all bad, I'm all good, or vice versa. And later on, other scholars, such as Winnicott and others, suggested what is known as the moral default. The moral default is when the child says, mother cannot be bad, because if mother is all bad, that's very frightening. It means I will not survive. Remember, the child depends on mother for food, for shelter, for caring. So if mother is all bad, it is life-threatening. So the child says, okay, mother cannot be bad because it's too terrifying. I am all bad. I'm the one who is all bad. And I deserve to be punished. I deserve to be, mistreated, abused, and so on. So this is the initial formation of the internalized bad object. This is how the narcissist actually develops, because there is an internal bad object that says, I'm all bad, mother is all good. Gradually, healthy people integrate the pictures of mother, the good and the bad, and they don't need to split anymore, and consequently, the internalized bad object, which is also known as primitive superego, the internalized bad object dies because there's no need for it anymore. The narcissist never reaches this stage. The narcissist is never able to integrate bad and good aspects of people, starting with mother. So the narcissist remains stuck with the internalized bad object, which says, I'm all bad, mother is all good. Now, remember that in the narcissist's life, every woman is a mother. So instantaneously, the narcissist splits, and the narcissist says, I'm all bad. Initially, my partner is all good. And that is indeed the idealization phase. That's why narcissists idealize. That's the love bombing. Because at that stage, the narcissist says, mother is all good. My partner, who is a maternal figure, is all good. I am all bad. At that point, the narcissist acts out the internalized bad object in order to convince himself that he is all bad and mother is all good. He seeks to behave in ways which are all bad. So this could include sexual practices, obviously, where he is all bad and the mother is all good, and he is the one who degrades the mother, humiliates the mother, attacks the mother somehow. But there is a very important caveat. Narcissists need the mother to love them. They need the mother to tell them how irresistible they are, how super attractive, how perfect, how. So a narcissist would never engage in practices which are non-consensual. That's a psychopath. Psychopath would do that, but a narcissist would never do that. Because if the narcissist has to force the partner to participate in whatever the practice is, never mind how kinky, how crazy, how sadomasochistic, how, if the partner is not consenting, then it shows the narcissist that he is not attractive, that he is not irresistible.
So rape is not his thing.
No.
Rape.
No, of course not, because rape means I am not attractive. I am not irresistible. I have to use force. While the narcissist needs to feel that the partner would do anything, would accept anything, would initiate anything even, would, just because she cannot resist him, just because she must have him, she's obsessed with him, he's super attractive, and a woman would do anything to be with him. And so the consent in narcissism is super crucial, very crucial. The consent, not only just any consent, enthusiastic consent, initiative, going crazy over the narcissist. He needs this, especially somatic, but also cerebral. He needs this. The psychopath, on the other hand, objectifies the potential partner, and if she refuses to comply, the psychopath could become violent, because here there is no investment in grandiosity. The psychopath just wants to use the woman's body, and if she refuses, like everything else, the psychopath would go for it, but not the narcissist, not even malignant narcissist. A malignant narcissist is a combination of narcissist, psychopath, and sadist. But the malignant narcissist is, as the name implies, at the core, a narcissist. So even the malignant narcissist, who is psychopathic, who is sadistic, would exercise this kind of practices, sexual practices, only when the partner cannot resist, is begging him to behave in this way, because he is super irresistible and she must have him, and she cannot hold herself, she cannot control herself. He needs this drama. He needs these visible, ostentatious signs of how he is supreme, also sexually. So this is a distinction that few people make, and there are many mistakes about it online.
In my experience with my narcissist, I had to face that the narcissist was very indifferent to gender. First, he told me he's gay because I'm gay too. Mm-hmm. Then he told me he's bisexual. Then he told me he's heterosexual. And I found out that he makes no difference between men, between women, between transgender. He even told me that the perfect love for him would be transsexual, because the perfect love is to unite with a female. So he's a male and a female. You wrote about it in your book. So sometimes I think the narcissist gives sex to anybody who provides him with narcissistic supply and gives him the autoerotic motivation to love himself at last in the sexual act.
Indeed, the partner is irrelevant, completely irrelevant. The partner needs to provide two things. He needs to inform the narcissist in no uncertain terms, in enthusiastic terms, in out of control terms. He needs to inform the narcissist that he is attractive and irresistible, thereby allowing the narcissist to make love with himself or to himself, autoerotically. Whether this partner who is enabling and facilitating the autoerotic sex is male, female, or even non-human, is a little besides the point, is not. So another thing is that narcissism, as I said, is a disruption in the formation of the self. Gender identity, gender or sexual orientation, they are all critical facets of the self. If you don't have a self, you cannot have a fixed sexual orientation. You cannot have gender identity, which is essentially a social role. So you are very fluid. Ironically, narcissists are super fluid, are very fluid in this sense. But ultimately, the preferred sexual act of the narcissist is masturbation. Yes. The preferred sexual act.
Yes.
So they don't feel, when they don't have a sexual partner, it's not a big deal because they can make love to themselves. And they are their only real sexual partner. And so when the partner is there, it helps because the partner affirms the false self. The partner says you are irresistible, you're sexually super attractive, you're this, you're that. So it helps. But it's a sufficient condition, but not necessary one. Narcissists can do very well without.
When we know that narcissists have no conscience, no remorse, no ethical standards. On the other side, you said that narcissists can divide between bad or good, but they just don't care. So yeah. Why is that so?
Remember what we said, that everything the narcissist does is a simulation. So narcissists can simulate morality and ethics to a very convincing and high degree. These are known as pro-social narcissists or communal narcissists. These are narcissists whose locus of grandiosity is that they are super moral, righteous, amazingly ethical, reliable. But these are narcissists. It's all a simulation. It's all intended to obtain narcissistic supply by being ostentatiously charitable or moral. So yes, as you immediately see, you cannot be a pro-social narcissist without being able to tell the difference between right and wrong. All narcissists are capable of this. But what they lack is the identification of right with good and wrong with evil. They don't do this distinction of good and evil. In this sense, they are dissocial or antisocial. They're psychopathic. They ask, what's in it for me? Is it good to obtain the goal? So it's right and wrong, but that distinction is not relevant. What is relevant, it works, it doesn't work. This is so they are not immoral, they are amoral. Amoral. Whereas the psychopath is very often immoral.
But they are not evil in the sense self-styled expert tell all the time on YouTube, for instance, these are evil people.
No.
They are not, they just do their things to get narcissistic supply.
Yes. They are no more evil than viruses, let's say. It is true that viruses cannot tell the difference between right and wrong and cannot modify their behaviors. That part is true. But the narcissist's view of right and wrong is not a motivational or attitudinal view. In other words, it would not alter or yield behavior. And the pursuit of narcissistic supply is definitely compulsive. That means exactly like a virus, the narcissist cannot help it. It's addictive, he's a junkie, he's addicted to the drug. So the similarities with viruses are considerable. Evil requires premeditation, intent. Even in law, you have mens rea. You have the criminal intent. And without mens rea, without criminal intent, you will not be convicted, you will not be sent to prison. So it's crucial to have intent. Narcissists don't intend to be evil. They don't intend to be good, because they don't do good or evil. They intend to do only one thing, obtain supply.
But you said they always feel like they are going to a trial, like in Franz Kafka's Der Prozess. So they feel that they recognize or whatever, that they do something wrong, but can they grasp what they do wrong with other people?
The trial is not about being right or wrong or about being good or bad. That's not the trial. The trial is, do I meet the standards? Do I perform? Am I deserving of supply? What is the judgment from the outside of my? So narcissism is a performative act, a performative state. And like an actor in a theater, the actor is on trial, because if the audience doesn't like the play and doesn't like the acting, that's humiliating, that's horrible, that's heartbreaking. And so it's the same with the narcissist, is on trial in the sense that what would his audience think and how would his audience react? Because he relies on the input from the audience, the feedback, to regulate his internal environment. And he's terrified of falling apart. He's terrified of falling apart. He's terrified of what we call narcissistic mortification or narcissistic injury. It's a very brittle, very fragile construct. The internal space of the narcissist is it's kaleidoscopic, but it's also very fragile. And so it can be broken like this.
And it's always about, yes, it is always about performance, never about reputation. You said it in one lecture.
No, reputation
they don't care. They don't care about your reputation.
No.
What they want is attention and adulation.
The key commodity, what is monetized in the narcissistic space is attention. Attention could be positive, could be negative. So if the narcissist cannot be loved, and then he prefers to be feared or hated, even hated. There's another thing which you give me the opportunity to mention. And that is the fact that people think that the narcissist grandiosity is about being the best, being the greatest, being the richest, being the most famous. No. The narcissist grandiosity is about being unique. So, for example, a narcissist can be very proud of his victimhood. He can say, there's never been a victim like me, I'm unique. Or a narcissist can be very proud of his failures. He can say, no one failed like me. The bankruptcy of my company was the biggest in history. That makes me unique. So it's uniqueness. So the two key features are attention, negative or positive, and uniqueness. There is no valence, it's not, there is no value here.
As you say, I love to be hated, or I hate to be loved.
Yes, it's any type of attention is utterly acceptable.
Okay.
And utterly interchangeable.
Let me ask you at last two questions, if you allow, about social media. You say social media is not social. Why?
Social media is constructed intentionally to encourage competition between people and negative emotions that are the outcome of failure in obtaining attention. So it is an attention-based platform, and the failure to obtain attention is penalized, and it's penalized via a mechanism known as relative positioning. Relative positioning is when you compare yourself to other people. The platforms encourage comparisons. They encourage you to compare how many likes did you receive? How many views did you receive? The algorithm is built this way to expose you to the accomplishments of other people and in essence to humiliate you, to motivate you via humiliation and envy. These are the key emotions in social media, in humiliation and envy. And it's public, it's ostentatious. In a way, it's narcissistic mortification. They cater to your narcissistic side and they encourage competition. Now, competition, envy, etc., triggers aggression because we know since 1939, the work of Dollard, we know that frustration translates to aggression. If I fail to get the same number of likes like you, if I fail to get the same number of views like you, I will envy you. I will be frustrated, and inevitably, I will become aggressive. I can aggress against you, or I can be just generally aggressive, which is what we see on social media. And that is great for monetizing eyeballs, because it brings people back again and again. It's addictive. This process is addictive. Of course, it's not social. It's not only asocial, it's antisocial. It's a totally psychopathic construct from A to Z. And if you want to go into religion or morality, it's evil. It's evil, simply.
But it could be a wonderful space for narcissistic hunting for new victims. Also,
Yes.
it's anonymous. You have no intimacy, no real intimacy that narcissist threatens. And on the other hand, you said that victims are more aware, getting more aware, but they make a move that they are the victims, the hypersensitive, the hyper-empathetic people. That's all not true. So is the victim, like in social media, is it maybe a narcissist too?
Yes, I believe that ostentatious victim, public-facing victims, victims whose identity is victimhood. That's who they are. They're only victims. They're nothing else, just victims. And leverage their victimhood to obtain benefits. Could be attention, could be money, could be, these people are, of course, covert narcissists, or even in many cases, psychopaths. They're just pretending to be victims. Now, some of them have convinced themselves that they're victims because narcissists often claim victimhood. It's a normal process. This is called alloplastic defenses. They blame other people. So it's natural for these people to be in the position of a victim, and they feel comfortable. They don't feel they're deceiving anyone. They really believe they're victims, And it's a great space because they get attention, they get companionship, they get empathy, they get money, a lot. There's a lot of money in victimhood. And they get benefits. They impose obligations and duties on other people by virtue of being victims. They emotionally blackmail and guilt trip other people, and so on. It's a totally narcissistic space. Totally narcissistic space. This movement of empaths, for example. Empath is a self-aggrandizing claim. It's a claim that you possess empathy more than other people, that you are special. It's a claim that you're special. Not only special, you're unique. There is even gradations of empath. There is supernova empath. There is Hayoka empath. All kinds of bullshit about all types of empaths and so on. And they are competing. It's what we call competitive victimhood. They're competing. My narcissist was much worse than your narcissist. No, I was a much bigger victim than you. I am empathic. You are nothing compared to me. I'm much more empathic. I'm galactic empathic. I'm Yucca empathic. It's nauseating. And these people, and I visit their forums on a regular basis. These people are the least empathetic people I've ever met in my life. Many of them shame the narcissists. Narcissists compared to them is empathic. They're violent. They're verbally abusive. They are exclusionary. They're aggressive. They're horrible people, simply horrible people. Frankly, if these are the victims of narcissists, I am happy that they've been victimized.
Yes, I made the same experience when I was victimized and starting to heal, also with your lectures. I went to a self-help group online and I said, well, it was for me, the meeting with the narcissist was one of the best therapies for me to clear up my family history and so on. And I said to them, if you want to heal, you have to do this and this and this, and then you also can forgive not only you but also the narcissist. And the reaction against me was really horrible.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I thought they want to stay in their victimhood and don't want to develop.
It's splitting.
Yeah.
It's a splitting defense. They say
They
that
are all
narcissist
good.
is all bad, I'm all good.
And
Splitting. That's exactly what narcissists do. They split.
okay, let's go to the last question I have right now. Let's talk a little bit about cold therapy. As we know, narcissistic personal disorder cannot be healed, cannot be treated with medicaments, with pharmaceutical medicaments. What can we do? We can modify behavior to make it more easier for the environment to deal with a narcissist. That's your intention and your invention about cold therapy. What are you doing in cold therapy? Or what is it? What makes it maybe dangerous? Because when you mortify a narcissist, I did that, they switch to first borderline, and they have not the tools to work with borderline, and then they go to the primary psychopath. And as you said yourself, the only goal for the primary psychopath is to destroy you. So how do you work? You stay with the people then, and how do you deal with them when they are switching from one personal disorder to another personal disorder?
Yeah, well, first of all, many existing treatment modalities, existing therapies are successful at modifying the behaviors of narcissists. So we have schema therapy, we have others, and they're successful. And some abrasive and antisocial behaviors can ameliorate, can be reduced. So this was not the aim of cold therapy. The aim of cold therapy was to get rid of the false self. That's the target of cold therapy. And when you get rid of the false self, you get rid of it multiply as a side effect or bonus. You get rid of the fantasy defense, you get rid of grandiosity as a cognitive distortion, you get rid of all the attributes of the false self. But the false self is only one element in narcissism, an important element, but only one. So, for example, the narcissist doesn't develop empathy after cold therapy. He remains a narcissist. He's exploitative, he's disempathic, he's psychopathic a bit, none of these changes. I've been in the middle of training and certifying therapists and mental health practitioners, clinicians. I've been in the middle when the pandemic struck. And we've had training workshops and so on and so forth in multiple cities all around the world, from Brazil to Hungary and so on. And then the pandemic struck and we had to stop. And we will restart our efforts soon. But I can say the following. Since cold therapy uses a process known as re-traumatization, which was not invented by me, it was invented in the 80s by Foa and others. Re-traumatization is a recreation of the trauma, not verbally, not symbolically, but in real terms. Of course, there's no physical contact of any kind. There's no beating, physical contact is prohibited because physical contact is comforting. So, but what is created is an environment which is hostile, non-containing. The therapist is not your friend. The therapist is perceived as a persecutory object, as an enemy. And then this triggers severe transference and countertransference. That means that the patient starts to see you as the abusive figure in the past, abusive mother, abusive father, whatever. And you don't you don't mitigate this. You encourage it by counter-transference. You behave in a way which encourages the transference until there is the patient, there is what we call vividness or revividness. The patient lives through the trauma again. I emphasize there's no physical contact of any kind. If the trauma, for example, was physical, beatings, if the trauma was sexual abuse, no, of course, no reenactment of this. But the object, the person that did these things, we reenact the emotions and the cognitions that had to do with that person. It's a little like what used to be called. So it's known as vividness. These are techniques that are well known. They're not, The problem with this is exactly what you said, that when the defenses crumble, when the defenses are taken out, when we create artificial decompensation via re-traumatization, the patient remains defenseless without a skin. And this causes tremendous emotional dysregulation and suicidal ideation, which is exactly what happens in borderline personality disorder. So the patient becomes borderline. At that stage, of course, the therapist needs to step in and begin treatments, which are essentially treatments for borderline, like dialectical behavior therapy and so on. So the patient is not abandoned after the false self is dismantled. Patient is not abandoned. He transitions to phase 2. There are 3 phases in cold therapy. And the second phase is treatments for borderline, in essence, and coupled with treatments for trauma. And then the third phase is reframing, essentially cognitive behavior therapy. Reframing and so on. So the patient emerges the same, only without the need for narcissistic supply, without grandiose, fantastic, inflated self-perceptions, cognitive distortion, and without identifiable false self. There's no false self. There's much more realistic self-assessment, self-awareness, so the patient is much closer to himself. There's no false self in the middle. And interaction with reality are much better.
But when you say there is no core, there is an absence, and you take away the false self, what is there then? Can it be filled with something else?
No, nothing. No,
the emptiness is there.
Yeah. Nothing changes. Nothing. Just the need for supply. This addiction. Think of it as rehab. It's a kind of rehab. It's addiction. This addiction was created by exposure to trauma and misguided, dysfunctional attempts to cope with the trauma. So what we do, we take the patient back to the trauma, and we teach the patient how to cope with trauma in a more functional way, without grandiosity, without supply, without false self. So it's a post-traumatic therapy, in effect. It's a trauma therapy. Had nothing to do with narcissism, actually. It's a trauma therapy. And then the rest is the same. The emptiness, the depression, if there is depression, the lack of empathy, the exploitativeness, it's all the same. Inability to access positive emotions, it's all the same. Nothing changes.
How long do you need for this process when you re-traumatize?
We evaluate. Licensed therapists haven't yet practiced it, although there are a few licensed therapists that are already working with it. They haven't practiced it in a way that I consider rigorous, not under clinical supervision, not in laboratory. So I can't. But they claim, these therapists, there are therapists in Europe, in America, and so on, in Brazil. They claim that it takes about 6 months. That's what they claim.
Okay.
I don't know if it's true. I must clarify. I don't know if it's true.
Very last question now. You founded a foundation, I read in the internet. And what are you doing? Informing colleagues, psychology students about personality disorders? Because I see in
the foundation, because we have 1 minute. We have 1 minute left. I will try to answer your question. The foundation gives 3 scholarships: one in physics, one in psychology, one in economics, to people who are willing to study my work in these fields and continue the work. That's a legacy kind of thing. Because I entered psychology very late in life. Prior to that, I was an economist of some standing, I would say.
And a physician.
And
physician too, yeah?
Prior to that, I was a physicist. So I've had several lives. I'm old enough for that. So this is the foundation to continue my work long after I'm gone.
Okay, fine. So we will meet again mid-November. I have some more questions because I read all
My
your
pleasure.
books. I saw most of your lectures. I learned very much. I could heal myself. And I want to thank you, really thank you.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
You make really wonderful work. You help many people. And if it's the supply I can give you, I will give you by my whole heart.
Thank you.
And I hope we will meet again here. And
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen. Auf Wiedersehen.
Thank you.
Ciao.